What's up, y'all? Tyler here with a little bit of an ISO because I want to talk about one of my favorite games every year in women's basketball, the Cy-Hawk series, Iowa versus Iowa State. We're going to get into the game, but first, let me touch on the rivalry real quick because in women's basketball, almost every rivalry is about greatness, right? Think about it. UConn Notre Dame, we got that this week. That's a rivalry of greatness. UConn Tennessee, that is a rivalry of greatness. I mean, you kind of keep going back to UConn, but even UConn and South Carolina is a budding rivalry because of greatness. But in the world of women's basketball, especially as we're now seeing the growth, and frankly, some fan bases just aren't as tapped in as they should be, Iowa and Iowa State is a rivalry that is just based on pure two things: love of the game and hate of the opponent. A real-life in-state rivalry. And there's certainly other ones like it in women's basketball, don't get me wrong, but none of them do it quite like the state of Iowa. And I love it. And it's not just, I mean, really every Iowa team. Like if you go down the list of D1 teams in Iowa, you're not wanting to play any of these teams. Hello, Northern Iowa. I'm talking about you. But this game, the energy in it, and I think there was a lot of people that were just ready to write off Iowa women's basketball as a program, as a fan base, and everything in the post-Caitlin Clark era. And that was really easy to do. But it was wrong. And tonight showed that in a game that was incredible with the energy. The crowd was into it. Like, this was a real deal rivalry game, and I loved it. And so as much as I love and appreciate, and there is no knock on the other rivalries, specifically the UConn ones, really, this is different. And it has just a different vibe to it. But the importance to it, especially as both teams have now climbed at the same time in the way that they have over the past 5 years or so, it's been really, really fun to see this grow in importance on a national scale, because the scale in Iowa has always been there. And I love that. But let's get into this game, because Iowa picks up a massive win here to me, 75-69 for the Hawkeyes in this game. And it's no secret. We've talked about it before. We've talked about it recently on Ball Up Top this week. You can find the tier list as a video segment here. You can find the full podcast on our website down below in the description. I've been very high on Iowa. And honestly, that came after we interviewed Jan Jensen in the lead up to the season. I was just sold, man. I really was. And there's not many times, I don't know the last time you could really consistently say that Iowa is winning basketball games with defense. And that's what's happening. And certainly the offense is still there. And we're going to talk about that, Lucy Olsen. But the defense in this game, they turned Iowa State over, 21 times. Iowa State doesn't do that. One of the best assist-to-turnover ratios in the entire nation. Iowa State doesn't do that. Iowa forced that tonight. And that was really, really interesting, especially because they were the only team to really have to dig out of a hole in this game. That first quarter, Iowa State started hot, and a lot of that had to do with Audi Crooks and the game that she had, 31 points. Basically, if she got in the paint or on a block, like in the bottom half, there was just a little like zone there, a green zone that I feel like Audi Crooks was seeing in her mind. And as soon as she got in that zone and got the ball, you could just put 2 points on the board. Free throw shooting is massive for Audi going forward, but it felt like a lot of that. And it was a little bit tougher down the stretch. Hannah Stokey played some great defense down the stretch, but especially early on in this game, man, she was unstoppable. 31 points, 10 rebounds in this game, 14 and 22, which I feel like I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, but I'm feeling pretty confident. Most of those misses came in the second half. But regardless, Iowa fights back. And they do it in a way that we haven't seen Iowa do before. And because we know what Caitlin Clark brought. And it's just a different – sounds pretty similar to, honestly, what I've been talking about with South Carolina. It's a different formula this year. And it got it done tonight. And I think that is a positive outlook for Iowa. And there's also some things that Iowa State has to look inward for and be like, what went wrong? But I want to talk about Lucy Olsen, because you want to talk about doing things differently, a different formula. Yes, Iowa has a guard that can distribute the ball, not as well as Caitlin Clark, can score the ball certainly, but does it in the mid-range. If no one else is going to keep the mid-range alive, Lucy Olsen is going to. And I'm telling you right now, and I made this stat up during the game, but I promise you that Lucy Olsen has the highest success rate for a ball landing on the rim and rolling in for a bucket. Like, I swear it happened like 3 or 4 times on mid-ranges. Like, it just like sat down on the rim and made its way in, which was just ridiculous. Like, I don't know how she kept doing it. But the way that she would come off screens or movement in the mid-range and just get a good shot up was incredible. And frankly, she ends up with 25 points in the game, which is obviously great. 5 assists, 9 of 22, which frankly, I mean, obviously that's not the best field goal percentage. There was a couple grenades that she caught towards the end of a shot clock. 0 of 4 from 3, which is obvious. That's not really her game in that way, compared to the mid-range. But what Lucy Olsen was able to do was kind of do just enough, right? As Iowa was playing good defense, she was doing just enough to kind of keep them within 4 to 6, and never really got deeper than that. Once they came back from the initial, let's see. Actually, I can pull it up right now. What was Iowa State's largest lead of the game? 10. Okay, so both like that 10-point lead felt massive in the first quarter because it was like I felt like it was going to snowball, and they were able to handle that. They and the Hawkeyes, and I was very, very impressed. Very, very impressed with Lucy Olsen in this game. And she's someone that, from her time at Villanova, like, if you know, you know. Like, this is not a surprise that she's doing this. I know that she was a player that when we saw, we were in the No Cap Space chat, like, super excited when this was the transfer that was announced, because it just made sense as someone to kind of bridge between the eras of Caitlin Clark leaving and what comes next for Iowa. Lucy Olsen is a perfect person to put in there. But as I mentioned, Lucy Olsen kind of did just enough to, in a sense, match what Audi Crooks was doing. And it was just going to be who was going to have the next player step up. Addie Brown sits for, I think it was the entirety of the third quarter with 3 fouls. I hated that decision, frankly. Iowa State was consistently up, give or take like 4 to 6 points in that, like I said. And I felt like this was a point where they could have tried to step on the gas, and they could have provided themselves the player that was going to be the next one to step up. Because Audi and Lucy were pretty much going band for band in this game. And it felt like it was just going to be the next player. And instead, that player came from Iowa and Sydney Affolter, who just, that second half just turned up. Like 6 of 11, 3 of 6 from 3, 16 points, 6 rebounds. She can rebound, man. She can rebound, which we've seen some of that before, but she can rebound. And that was the difference in this game, was that Iowa had the next player step up. Because, you know, we honestly, like, going into this game, you obviously assume it became a Stolke. And it wasn't tonight. And I have some thoughts on that as well. But it wasn't tonight. It was Sydney. It was Sydney Affolter, and she came up big. That's all it took, was one player from either team. It could have been Emily Ryan. It could have been Hannah Stolke. It could have been anyone random that caught fire from 3. Like, it could have been anybody. But it was Sydney Affolter for Iowa that tipped the scales in the end of this game. I also think it's super interesting, just the way that Iowa's getting it done. They shoot 25 3-pointers, which isn't a small amount by any means. It was a really, I think they started 0 for 9 from 3, which is kind of part of why they had to dig out of that hole initially. And it's, again, just the ability to find a different way to do it has been super, super intriguing. And it starts really with the foundation of defense for Iowa this season. And we talked to Jan Jensen. We knew going into this season that the goal was to be more well-rounded. We saw it in Charlotte when we had boots on the ground at Allied Tip-Off when they defeated Virginia Tech there. We saw the defense there. Like, it is just different. But it's a foundation that I'm beginning to trust more and more. And as we kind of look forward now a little bit, you know, this is a massive win for Iowa. This is a rivalry that, as big as it has been, Iowa has still pretty much dominated this rivalry over the past decade or so. And to see that continue as you enter this new era with Jan Jensen, as you leave the Lisa Bluder and Caitlin Clark era, and you see this domination continue, is massive. And I really feel like this is a win that can propel you, especially going into Big Ten conference play, which is going to be brutal for Iowa. Like it's going to be rough. I do think, just for me, the biggest thing is, how do we make Hannah Stokely's life easier on the offensive end? Because the defense really picked up, especially in that fourth quarter on Audi Crooks, because it was a struggle. Audi was just dominating everyone on Iowa. She ends the game 13 points, 4 of 4 from the field, 5 of 8 from the free throw line, 9 rebounds, 4 steals, notably a block. Like, Hannah Stokely made so much of her living off of movement off of Caitlin Clark, whether that be outlet passes for 4 verticals. We asked her about that when we interviewed Hannah, and the art of the 4 verts that we call it, the big outlet passes where it's just kind of a Hail Mary down the court and F it Stokely down there somewhere. And we haven't really seen that, even in a game where Iowa State turns the ball over a lot, and Iowa scores off those turnovers a lot, but not really in the fast break. And that's been something that's been really missing from her game. And normally this would be a game where she would rack up points in past years with Caitlin Clark next to her. And just figuring out, how do we make that life easier? Because Audi Crooks was guarding her for the majority of the time. She kind of just stayed in the paint. And we know Stokely can shoot it. Like, she's absolutely a capable, like it's there. We've seen her shoot the ball, and we just didn't really see those attempts today. So maybe it's as simple as just shoot the ball. If they're going to play off you, shoot the ball. Not necessarily from 3, but just like from a little bit outside the paint, and figuring out how to add that to the game. That might just be the solution. It really might be as simple as that. But we haven't really been able to see Hannah Stokely get rolling this season. And if they can get that, in addition to what helped cause this win, and certainly I don't think she played bad by any means, but it's just, I'm very high on Stokely's ceiling here and what she can be. And it's just interesting from a shot attempt perspective to only see her have 4. She had the least shots from all the starters tonight. But for Iowa State, goodness, this was not the start I expected. They just have not been able to get everyone rolling at the same time, and figuring out, in a similar sense to Stokely, how do you do that? It never felt this difficult last year. And maybe that's just the scout changing. Maybe it's people understanding more of what this team is truly capable of. Because for my money's worth, Addie Brown is one of the most underrated players in the nation. How does this become a consistent thing? And Emily Ryan as well, is a really, really solid point guard. But to have 9 turnovers tonight is very unlike her. But it has to be someone other than Audi. And like I said, Iowa had the player that stepped up outside of the main contributor of the night. And that's why they won this game. And ultimately, that's why they were able to pull away. What does Iowa State have to do in order to get 2 players rolling at the same time at a high level? Obviously, 3 would be fantastic. What is that next step? And because Audi was really solid tonight, and obviously it results in a loss. So what are those next steps? That's what I'm looking for, and how that can develop. Because obviously this is now several losses. I mean, the South Carolina loss is one I feel like you just have to immediately flush down the drain. Northern Iowa is actually a very solid team. Iowa, I've been high on. So these aren't particularly, quote unquote, bad losses, but it just hasn't been easy for Iowa State. How do they make that so? Especially with a player as talented as Audi Crooks down low and as dominant as she can be, like we saw tonight, against teams that just frankly can't match up with her one-on-one. How do we make life easier? And how is it, maybe it is trying to, is it Audi Crooks playmaking for others, from the post up? I don't know exactly what the answer is. But for Big 12 play coming up, in a Big 12 conference that is kind of open. I mean, it is opened up really with Texas and Oklahoma leaving. This felt like the year for Iowa State to really establish themselves as a long-term power with Addie Brown and Audi Crooks to kind of run the Big 12. And right now, it doesn't look like that. And conference play is just weeks away. So there's not a whole lot of time to figure that out. I think they're going to be okay. But I think the expectations that I had, that others had, that the AP poll had, might not be reached. At least not at this rate. But they're a good team. They have a star player. And Bill Fennelly's been doing this for a whole long time. And is certainly a capable coach. So I'm on the lookout now. What is the response? Because for Iowa, they're on a good trajectory. Iowa State, you got some things to figure out. But that's going to do it for me. That's my thoughts on this Corn Classic, this Cyhawk series. Quite possibly my favorite rivalry in women's basketball. I love it. It's good, old-fashioned, in-state rivalry hoops. And frankly, there's not much that can match that, especially in a women's basketball state like Iowa. I loved it. It was such a fun watch. Very interested in both of these teams going forward. Make sure you stay tapped in as we go forward with all of our coverage. We got some big-time matchups coming. Some of those rivalry games I was talking about, they're on deck. So we're going to be diving into some big-time matchups coming soon. We are close to 1,000 subscribers as well on our website. You can find that down below. Go get your home field. You see it. It's Christmas shopping. It's holiday shopping. I haven't done it yet either. It's okay. 15% off, code NOCAT15. Subscribe here, like here. It all helps truly so much in your support of No Cat Space and the coverage we're able to do here. And I'll see you next time.